Hey everyone, what goes on? Mad Attack here, and welcome back to my top 5 ideas web series. This is my second episode of on the channel, and today I will be talking about my top 5 Spider-Man Homecoming 2 ideas. Now I know it's probably not going to be called Homecoming 2 or whatever, it'll probably be called something else, but I know it's going to be the sequel to Spider-Man Homecoming, which I heard is going to take place after the events of Avengers 4. Right now it's currently untitled. But as far as I've gathered up some information from Avengers and how the sequel to Spider-Man is going to take place after the events of Avengers 4 and start off Phase 4, I want to give you my top 5 ideas on what I think should happen in the sequel. And so, without further ado, let's start. So, my first idea that I think I would really like to see in the sequel is Harry Osborn's version of the Green Goblin returning to the series. The reason why I put this as my number 1 option for what might happen is because since the first movie already had Ned as Peter's friend, and even I heard Ned's even going to appear in Avengers Infinity War, but probably in a smaller role. But I know for a fact that Harry Osborn is technically the first ever friend in the series that was mentioned in the series of Peter's, and Ned wasn't. So what I think could really work out in the sequel is if Harry all of a sudden shows up and Peter realizes that he hasn't seen him in a long time because they used to be friends, but now he's friends with Ned. And the reason why I say his version of the Green Goblin is because he might possibly turn into the Green Goblin when he realizes that Peter is Spider-Man, just like how Ned found out Peter was Spider-Man. But instead of Ned trying to destroy Peter for something, just like they said in the Amazing Spider-Man movies, how Harry's family has a little curse on them, and how it's like a disease that causes them to die, that Harry might need Spider-Man's blood to where he can self-heal, to where he might not be able to die of the disease, but he could still die. You never know. But I think that would be a good thing to bring into the sequel for Spider-Man in the MCU. And the reason why I think Harry's version of Green Goblin should come back, just like it was in the Amazing Spider-Man 2 or whatever, is because that could possibly kick off the series to where Peter definitely has to go against a whole lot more villains than expected. Now I know in one of the post-credit scenes for the first movie, the guy who I heard normally plays Scorpion in the comics said he had some friends on the outside who would love to get to know Spider-Man, like slice his throat or whatever. That comes to my number 2 idea, and that is for the main new villain in the series, in this movie, to be Kraven the Hunter. Because think about it, Scorpion said friends on the outside who would love to meet this guy. I mean, Kraven hunts things, and if he wants to hunt down Spider-Man for Scorpion, to make sure to let Scorpion know after he kills Spider-Man that he finds out who the identity is or something, that could work really well with the series. So that if Kraven were to tell Scorpion who the identity of Spider-Man is, then the third movie, if that ever happens, would definitely kick off a good form of newer villains who could come after Peter Parker. Now, as for my third idea, now numbers 3 through 5 I know number 3 is a maybe. 4 and 5 might not actually happen, but I just put them as ideas. So for number 3, I have a Doctor Strange appearance. And the reason why I have him as a number 3 option that might possibly happen is because, think about it, when I said there was going to be a whole lot more villains in the future for Spider-Man in the MCU, that is maybe at some point possibly in the sequel, Doctor Strange could tell Peter how his future might possibly get more dangerous as time goes on. He might be making more enemies, and everyone who's dearest to him might be in danger. And just like how in the Amazing Spider-Man series, the first movie showed how Captain George Stacy was telling, even said the same thing. You're gonna make more enemies, and people will get hurt, especially some people that are close to you. That's what I think he made a good point in that movie. So I think that's what Doctor Strange could possibly do, instead of George Stacy saying it. Because I think because of the fact that the Amazing Spider-Man movies only had actually 2 movies, and yet they were gonna have 4 possibly, as far as I was aware. But then they canceled the last 2. They probably canceled the last 2 because of that reason, how they made George Stacy say that thing. Now, in the MCU, if they could make Doctor Strange say that to Peter, that would be an even bigger part of the franchise. Now, for the last 2 ideas, like I said, these 2 might not actually happen. Who knows? But for number 4, I have a Gwen Stacy appearance. Now, in the first movie, and this is a little spoiler, but if none of y'all have seen the first movie yet, but in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, near the end of the movie, the girl whose name is Michelle, says to everyone who's sitting at the table that her friends call her MJ. Now, does that sound familiar? That's because it's the name MJ comes from Mary Jane Watson. Now, even though her first, it says her real full name in the MCU is Michelle Jones, but that still means MJ if you make it shorter. So I think they did a good job with that, kind of changing the Mary Jane Watson concept but still keeping the MJ part of it, but just with a different name. So I think if Gwen Stacy were to appear in the sequel, which I don't think is likely, but if she did, it would kind of set up a romantic problem between MJ and Gwen, because he's been in love with both of them. He was in love with MJ in the first Spider-Man series with Tobey Maguire. He was in love with Gwen Stacy in the Amazing Spider-Man. So who knows? This MCU version could bring both of them into the story, and he can figure out who he likes better. Since Liz Allen is now away, and due to her father being in jail. And as for my last idea, possibly the story of Peter's parents, Peter's parents' death might show up, because if you saw the first movie when Peter told Ned that Aunt May could not know he was Spider-Man, is because after all she's been through, he is referring to the fact that Uncle Ben must have also died at some point, even before the events of Captain America: Civil War, when Spider-Man appeared, and also the fact about the death of Peter's parents. So I think that could possibly be a good storyline to come into the MCU for Spider-Man. But like I said, the 4th and 5th idea probably might not even work out. But for the first 3, especially the first 2, I know those might possibly be a definite. Maybe. I don't know. Write your thoughts in the comments below what you think might happen. And also give me your thoughts on number 3, if possible. So yeah, like I said, those are my top 5 ideas on what I would want to see in the sequel. Is the Harry Osborn's return, possibly as the Green Goblin as well. A new villain as Kraven the Hunter, since he's never shown up in any of those series at all. along with Doctor Strange's appearance, possibly Gwen Stacy's appearance, and the death story of Peter's parents. So like I said, write your thoughts in the description, in the comment section below, and let me know what you think should happen in the sequel. So as always, if you like this episode, hit that like button, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and I will see all of you dudes in the next video.